For various ministerial portfolios as undertaken or announced by the President of the Republic, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Those proceedings before the Appointments Committee started on Monday, so we'll take a look at that. And then we'll look at how we can find some resolution to the Bawku crisis. You would know, as a now, apart from the court issue, there was also a statement that has been made by government through defense, interior ministries, indicating that an individual who was installed as a chief for Bawku was installed illegally, and that his arrest, if he decides to hold himself as such, should be effected. We'll take a look at that in the second part of our deliberations. But let me just run by you, I guess, for the morning. Chief Executive for the National Youth Authority and also a former Deputy Minister for Information is Pius Enam Hajide. He is also with the Esojaman constituency. And Pius, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning.
It's been a while.
It's been a while.
Yeah, great.
Very good to be back here.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And then also a former chair for the People's National Convention. We have the PNC, Bernard Mona. Good morning to you.
Good morning, boss.
Okay. And also your Edem Agbana, former deputy youth organizer for the NDC. Your constituency, I keep forgetting, is
Ketu North.
Ketu North.
Yes.
Ketu North. So who are the other individuals who are running? You can't remember them. You don't have to mention them.
No, but I think we're about 11 in
You are 11?
race. Yes.
Hey, you are going to split the votes because we've been studying how politics are undertaken in Ghana.
Not necessarily. I think that my focus is to win, and I know I'll win. When I was contesting for Deputy National Youth Organizer, we were 13 in number. 5 from the Volta region. A lot of people expressed fear that we'll have people splitting votes and what have you. But we did what we could, and by God's grace, we won. And by the end of the day, on 13th May, I'm giving you the assurance that Ketu North will elect Edem Agbana as a parliamentary candidate.
And my good friend, Pius, I also know that you've been having a lot of interaction with the constituents of Esojaman. How's it been going so far?
Well, it's been going so very great. We are grateful to God for his continued blessings. We also are grateful to the chiefs and people of our constituency, the delegates, constituency executives, electoral area coordinators, and polling station executives who are calling us to duty. And they believe that the quality of parliamentary representation in Esojaman is a little problematic, and that we could only do better. And the history has been that Esojaman normally sees the kind of increased representation and advocacy which reflects on development on the ground when the NPP produces the Member of Parliament. And Honorable Osei has been used, and the evidence is clear. And the NDC has won the Esojaman seat more than the NPP, and people are not too satisfied with
who's the current member now?
Honorable Thomas Ampem-Nyakun.
Okay. So you're going to win the primaries and unseat him?
No, he will win the primaries, but Thomas Ampem
please, so straight away, let's get to the issues. Now, these are the proceedings as we put together in the report. And so we'll play that to you. We will come back, ask the key questions about, you know, whether the performance of the individuals who appeared before the Appointments Committee were up to scratch, or the expectations were just below the bar, so to speak. Please watch this. We'll be right back.
K.T. Hammond's vetting, which lasted for over 4 hours, was, as vettings go, a must-watch. The Trade Minister nominee was his usual fun, jovial self, but not everyone was laughing. Before that, Hammond had been engaged in a tense exchange with the Member of Parliament for Bawku Central, Mahama Ayarga.
You are conversant with the annual reports to Parliament of the staff of the Presidential Office. I'm sure you are conversant with the annual report, because all of us parliamentarians are given a copy of the report.
That does not necessarily make you conversant with it. You may have a copy, but you know what I mean.
Well, the assumption is that if you are as intelligent as you claim, you will be conversant.
Mr. Chairman.
The nominee must realize that he's before a serious committee. You can do whatever you do with us outside the sitting of the committee. When you come before the committee and you're on national television and everybody is viewing, you must take us serious.
Those exchanges did not stop the more intense conversations on major national issues, though. Central to the vetting was several questions about what Katie Hammond thought of what many described as an elephant-sized government which needs to be reduced to help save the economy.
A classic example. During my days as the Deputy Minister of Energy, we had one ministry called Ministry of Energy. At the time that President Mills came, it was divided. You then had Ministry of Petroleum and the Ministry of Power. It was divided into two. Is it so? It's not a straightforward question of whether government has to be downsized or government is bloated or whatever. You know, so listen. Just help me on this. I mean, I'm only going to government if House approves me. I'm going to the government for the first time. But sitting outside, I've been just wondering myself. All right, you take out my brother, the general here. You collapse the Ministry of Local Government. It's just he, the minister, local government, who will be going out. The staff would all be there. It will be there. The staff will be there. You can't sack them. They are public servants. You would have just eliminated the head, destroyed the ministry. It's a dicey issue. I mean, I see the sentiments that go with it. I mean, bloat it down. The letter that I referred the chairman to seems to have some reference to that. It doesn't seem to me to be entirely straightforward. But then, them are the breaks.
On the issue of the performance of the current administration and its management of the economy, Katie Hammond was of the view that Ghana's economy was not struggling in isolation and that it was a global phenomenon that required significant perspective. If he scales through the vetting, Mr. Hammond will have to deal with the complex issue of foreign retail traders, a subject that never seems to go away. He says tackling that requires a fine balancing act.
Well, Pius, that's why I ask you the question. What would you make of the appearance of these individual nominees before the Appointments Committee? You've been there before, so you know how rigorous or non-rigorous it can be.
Well, thank you very much once again, Roland, and let me use this opportunity to again express the country's sympathies to the family of our late brother, Christian Atsu, who, by the way, still is a Ghanaian youth. And that is why we at the National Youth Authority have decided that we will join the family within this period. You see that I'm wearing black. It is our association with the loss. And we are also quite happy with the attitude the government has shown generally towards the death. The Vice President himself was at the airport to receive the mortal remains. We believe that Atsu ought to be celebrated. He's a Ghanaian young star, and that we are quite happy that we see that happening. And so our condolences once again to his wife and his family and to the whole of Ghana. On the vetting, let me also congratulate the various nominees who have been appointed by His Excellency the President. I've been there before, like you rightly said, but I've been very, very impressed that within the short time that word about their nomination came out, the two gentlemen whose vetting I had the privilege to watch over the television yesterday have educated themselves quite enough. They have shown that they have been operating in the public space for some time, and they understand the needs, the views and aspirations of the people of Ghana. And they are drilling down and narrowing to the mandates that His Excellency the President is giving to them. Yesterday, the comment was made that not many people knew, for instance, the steel that the gentleman, for instance, Mr. Brian Achampong, is made of. He's a good friend of mine. I know him very well. And I do know that, given the time, people would even be more impressed. He's an academic, very learned, very calm demeanor, but he pays attention to detail. And you could see yesterday him churning out figures and facts relative to even trajectory and the growth rates in the agri sector, and the consistency with which he flowed, and the data that he was giving. I was marveled. I'm like, did he know that he was going to be minister? Did he understand the minister or what? It tells you that this is a sharp brain who will not take time to abreast himself with the issues. Same can be said for Mr. Honorable Katie Hammond, whom, by the way, we know is quite jovial and make light of situations. And I thought that having been in Parliament with his colleagues for the length of time, his colleagues will come to understand his demeanor as well, his style of doing things, and let go of some of the maybe the jovial comments that he makes to just spice the program and to let it be. I mean, after all,
are you making conclusion that they were too hard on him?
Not necessarily. I don't think so. It's a vetting. It's supposed to be an interview. They are supposed actually to be hard on you. You can take some of these things in stride and make light of it and move on. And so for me, generally, the exercise was very, very good. My only disappointment was that, you know, our colleagues in the NDC, when they did their, do you call it reshuffle or dismissal of the former leadership, the previous leadership of the minority caucus, the impression was created that Mr. Haruna Idrisu, the Honorable Haruna Idrisu and his team were lacking in some areas because, like they say in America, if it is not broken, why do you fix it? And so I was expecting to see something different.
Meaning what, you were not impressed?
Well, my view is that Honorable Haruna, that I've watched at the vettings of previous ministers, was, if it is the punching that the NDC wanted, I thought that the Honorable Haruna that I watched previously doing vettings was a little more probing and was a little more punchy. And I saw an attempt to draw attention to ourselves as individual persons, and sometimes the risk of getting embarrassed by some of the responses that came from the nominees. And I thought that it didn't send a good sign for the new leadership of the NDC minority in Parliament.
You are saying they are not up to scratch. They just don't match up to the previous.
Well, maybe they will learn with time. These things, experience you cannot buy on the market, and Haruna has been one of the longest.
You are saying they behave amateurish.
Well, I'm saying that compared to the Venerable Haruna Idrisu, Honorable Atu Forson,
Kesel Forson
still has some learning to do compared to Honorable Haruna Idrisu.
Well, Adam, prior to this, the NDC, through the General Secretary, in a signed statement, did indicate that en bloc, the position of the party is that the objective is to force the hand of the president to reduce the number of ministers and not necessarily either replace or even add more, so to speak. And the position in the public space is that if that was a position, why did you even participate in the first place in the vetting process?
Well, Roland, let me say good morning to our viewers, especially to the people in Ketu North. Over the weekend, we had a very successful health screening in Ehi, and we had more than 3,000 people participating. So I want to use your platform to thank the chiefs and people of Ehi and all the neighboring communities for participating. The train is on. We'll be getting to Habu very soon. Back to your question. I think that the leadership of the NDC must be commended for taking that position on the approval of ministers. The statement, as signed by our venerable General Secretary, the Honorable Fifi Fiavi Kwete, who himself was a member of Parliament and a minister at some point, indicate that the NDC wants to help the President to achieve the objective of a leaner government. Because, Roland, in times of austerity, this whole resignation by some ministers in the Akufo-Addo government gave President Akufo-Addo a bright opportunity to realign his government and reduce the size of government. And especially when President Akufo-Addo, then candidate Akufo-Addo in 2009 and also in 2013, is on record to have criticized heavily the size of government, even when the size of the then government he was criticizing was leaner. It is important for us to hold the president true to his words. Roland, in 2009, then candidate Akufo-Addo, in criticizing President Mills' government, which had only 74 ministers, said instead of the government focusing on having a lean government, we rather have lean Kenke, and we had an Obolo-sized government. And that was a government that had only 74 ministers. Leading members of the NPP at the time said the economy could not support having 74 ministers of state and ministers and their deputies. But here we are today, at the time that there is hyperinflation, at the time that there is haircut, and everyone agrees that we are challenged and our economy is in a mess, that as we speak today, we have no idea how we are going to get out of the ditch. It is important for government to use this opportunity of reshuffle to realign government and reduce the size of government. Unfortunately, President Akufo-Addo rather decided to replace and even add more. And I am happy that the NDC as a party has directed our members of parliament to take a position that they will not approve any of these new ministers.
Have you heard the president publicly stating that despite these calls, the ones that you refer to, there's nothing wrong with the size of government, and rather it's that this number of ministers and size of government that are going to undertake the deliverables?
So it makes the president come out, okay, as an inconsistent person, as a person whose words cannot be taken serious. Because if in 2009 you criticized the size of government with a size that was only 74 as too huge for our country, for our economy, and in 2023, you are running the country down. We are before the IMF begging for $3 billion. You are taking people's investments in the name of haircuts, and you have agreed with all of us that the economy is challenged, and yet you are maintaining over 120 ministers, and you have this fat-sized government, and now you want to provide a justification for it. It means that, one, the president does not even believe in his own principle. It means those days he was only criticizing for criticizing's sake. And so I don't think that the size of government is one that is even up for debate. We all agree that the number of ministers we have today must be reduced and reduced drastically. Secondly, what has been the performance of these over 120 plus ministers from 2017? What have they delivered? Every sector of the economy is challenged, from agriculture to education to the economy. We can all see what is happening in this country. And so if it is about the size, if it's about numbers, then I must say that the performance, the output of the over 120 ministers under President Akufo-Addo clearly shows that these huge numbers have failed. Because with 74 ministers, President Mills achieved better. With 86 ministers, President Mahama achieved better. And you have this huge number, and they are not doing anything. Nothing shows that they are solving any problem that we are confronted with, and that is true. Again, Roland, it's also important for us to look at the individuals that have been nominated. Somewhere 2010, I read the book The Prince by Niccolò Machiavelli. In The Prince, Machiavelli opined that in order to judge the wisdom of a leader, you do that by judging the quality of men that surround him. that to see how wise a leader is, you must look at the quality, the sagacity of the men that surround the leader. We have a situation where we all agree that the country is facing economic challenges. Then in appointing ministers, you bring people who clearly bring nothing on board.
What do you mean by they bring clearly nothing?
I watched the vetting clearly yesterday. And let me begin by commenting on the Honorable K.T. Hammond. One, I was disappointed that a few weeks after the Honorable K.T. Hammond described the youth of Ghana as having coconut empty heads, the president decided to reward such recklessness with an appointment.
What do you mean by recklessness?
You describe the young people of this country as empty heads, coconut heads. They had nothing to offer this country. Meanwhile, young people voted for him in his constituency. And instead of the president rebuking him, few weeks or months after, you offer him a ministerial appointment. It means you are rewarding the recklessness with which he made those utterances. And so, as a young person, I am particularly very disturbed that the president could appoint the likes of K.T. Hammond for such serious positions. Secondly, Honorable, my brother Pius made mention of the fact that he is jovial. At one point in time, all of us have some sense of humor. You cannot always be always that serious and all of that. But you know what? Ministerial position is a serious business. And so when you are appointed and you are a member of parliament, you have been asked to come before your colleagues for vetting. I watched his posturing, the rudeness, the arrogance, and he proffered no solutions to
Do you know that in the Kufuor administration he has held ministerial positions?
I know he's held positions, ministerial positions. I know he's a senior member of parliament and all of that. But that is insignificant at this moment.
You sure?
What for me is significant is that we are in challenge, okay? And the minister's position is a position of a policy maker.
Adam, I asked the question, why is it that the NDC has a statement out?
Yes.
That it clearly, based on principle, opposes nominations into ministerial positions, while those nominations or those appointments should rather see a reduction of government. So why are you participating then in the committee process?
It's a process. If you are not part of the vetting process, how do you even pass a vote on the nominee? So the statement as released by the General Secretary did not say don't participate in the vetting. Now, we are participating in the vetting. All our members, I am confident, who vote against all the nominees, and when it comes before the House for a vote to be passed, like it was done on Hawa Kumsin and Co.
You are sure?
Then I am sure that
Hawa Kumsin had one of the highest votes. I think
I'm saying I'm describing the process.
She had 165, if I remember.
I'm describing the process, and I can tell you that in the past, you did not see any formal statement from the NDC leadership indicating that it was all personal opinions. I was of the view some people were not to be approved. But again, still on the ministerial. So back on K.T. Hammond. When you listen to K.T. Hammond and you pay attention to the things that he said yesterday, he is coming into a ministry that is supposed to be a very serious ministry. But looking at his posturing, how he was making fun of the whole process, he doesn't even take his own house, parliament, seriously. And I think that the NDC must do everything possible not to approve these people as ministers, to save the public purse and also to treat the people of Ghana with some more respect.
Mr. Mona, there's a key consideration that has been made if you gauge public sentiment, not only in mainstream media, but also in the public space or social media, that says that the members of parliament on the side that are members of the committee and then the nominees on one side seem to be thinking that because we're friends or we're colleagues in parliament, the treatment should be soft. What do you make of it?
Good morning to you, Roland, to Pius, and to Adam, my two kid brothers who are desirous of going to parliament. I wish them both well in their pursuits, and to tell them that it's a very slippery road, especially when you are going for primaries.
But you've been there before.
And after primaries, you go for the main contest. Minimize the expectations I know how it is, so that at the end of the day, you still come stronger, whether in defeat or in victory. But I wish you well in your contest. Number 2, I watched keenly what happened in Parliament. Yeah, you cannot say you are completely disappointed in the performance of the individuals. There are 1 or 2 statements they would have made which will certainly touch you. And I want to start on that statement, that K.T. Hammond, when he was confronted with the issue of foreign retail businesses, he said that it must be handled with such care and tact. And I think so too.
Why?
Ghana is not an isolation. Ghana has been the champion of African integration. And so when you see people from Togo, Benin, Burkina Faso in Ghana trading, and then we say they are foreigners, and we see that there is hula baloo in the market space to say that our brothers from Nigeria should not trade in Ghana, then it takes you back in the late 70s, 80s, when we had the deportations, and of course, in the 60s, in fact 70s, when we had the compliance order. And then we also had the reversals in Nigeria, which led to Agege and what have you. We have to be very careful, and I think that on that basis, I think that K.T. Hammond's approach is something that we should all look at, so that we do not create a certain hiatus among our society and the African people. Beyond that, I think that if you listen to some of the things and you take the track record of K.T. Hammond, this was a deputy minister for energy, probably the longest serving deputy minister for energy, who, when Ghana was in the space of finding oil, drill ship that we owned, he went to sell it and carry the money in his briefcase. The money was not deposited in the Bank of Ghana's account. And he went and did the negotiation and carried the money to Ghana. Certainly, when you have a person who has shown in the past that, look, he does not respect administrative procedures, he does not respect accounting procedures, and that state resources can just be handled like granules in your packet and you decide when to fetch it. When the person is being offered another opportunity, you have to be really a bit hesitant. And I think that the confrontation between him and Mahama Ayarga was really needless.
Which confrontation are you referring to?
Because when Mahama Ayarga was talking, you realize that he almost always wanted to interject and draw the attention of Mr. Chairman that, look, particularly from the beginning when Mr. Chairman jokingly said that we know that you are the senior prefect of the House and you've been ordering us, we have to vet you. So I think that the chairman had pointed out that despite your status and the respect we give you in the House, today you are sitting before a serious and important committee, and so cut the crap and then be serious. But he did not get that part and went ahead to say that he expected the members of the committee to behave. That was, for me, not. And so when Mahama Ayarga said, take this committee serious and stop what we are doing, you realize that a bit ruffled the man. Now, I listened to my brother Pius, and I chuckled when he said that some people were shabri. You want to say that the minister who resigned was a dull brain.
I don't understand you.
Because
you mean Brian Achampong?
Yes, Brian Achampong going to the Ministry of Agric is described as a sharp brain.
So everybody else is a dull brain. Is that
Can I, Pius, if you decide to question my logic, you will not speak on this show because I will interject you. When you were speaking, I was sitting as if, can I make my words?
He's only asking that by inference.
Can I make, so can't I make inferences?
Yes, you can. You're allowed.
I am. So he should keep quiet and allow me to make my point. Okay. After which, if he has anything...
Well, he's only saying that he didn't...
No, but he doesn't interject me because I didn't do so.
Well, take a call. Okay, can we continue?
And I will not take that from him.
Right, well noted.
Well, but don't misrepresent me.
So you have a pen and a paper, or I should request for one for you?
No, that's okay. He has a pen and a paper. Please,
you want to be decorum on the show,
please,
and I will do the same for you because I regard you.
Restate that so that I get it.
You start here and said that Brian Acheampong is a sharp brain. And I'm saying that, is it to relate that the previous minister was a dull brain?
Well, he says you shouldn't mention the previous minister.
Can I? Because he's replacing a previous minister.
Oh, true.
Right? And so to sit here and say that he was a sharp brain, he was able to quote figures.
By logic.
And say that, why? He was able to account for the trajectory of GDP
Value
growth rate and what
that,
have you. And I was excited. Where I sit and I insist on this, GDP growth really does not signify the health of any economy, particularly a developing economy, when that GDP is owned largely by foreigners. If you understand the agricultural sector now, and you go around, just take a trip from the Volta region to the Ashanti region through Ejura, and you see the number of foreigners who have come, Chinese, Indians, and what have you, who are doing huge tracts of farms, that will lead to GDP growth rate because there is increase in productivity. But at the end of the increase in productivity, nothing stays in your economy. It is easily taken away because go and check what the Chinese are producing. They are producing vegetables and other things that they export. You understand? So yes, you will see a surge in agriculture, but I'm saying that at the end of the day, when you want to check to what benefit is it to the nation, you realize that indeed that GDP easily flew off your country. So we must be cautious when we are using GDP as a determinant of the health of our economy. And I have insisted on this on many platforms, that look, to determine whether our economy is doing well or not, you should use GNP, which is the gross national product, to measure, because that determines the production and ownership of the citizens of that country.
Indeed, there are other development economics like Professor Stiglitz who also hold that same view.
And so GNP is a better assessment of the health of the economy. Now back to the issue of the appointees. And yesterday, the question you asked is, because we are friends, that stops us from asking the relevant questions.
Because I asked that question.
And I think that I was surprised at the sharp brain saying that, I told you are my friend. Because of that, don't ask me probing questions. If I am your friend, then I should know your level of intellect and be able to ask you questions that you should be able to respond. Your inability to respond and to begin to say that because of friendship, I should soften my questions, does not make you a sharp brain.
Do you think that that makes the whole scenario of nominees and then those who are vetting, like just a normal friendship classroom work?
Well, probably in the past it has happened, because I watched the then Honorable, now Speaker of Parliament, when he appeared before the vetting committee for the first time, and they decided to give him a dose of his own pill when they asked him to sing the national anthem. Then he started to give a story and said that, Ebony, Ebo, you know Ebo and Ebony, Ebo, I do you, you do me. Because don't forget that he had asked Dominic Phobie one time to sing the national anthem. And so when he also appeared, people recollected and asked him a similar question. And then he pointed out, and they just joked about it, and they said why, and it went off. So sometimes you will want to take advantage of this. And if you think that somebody is your friend, actually, and because of that, you will not be able to ask probing questions. Our way of doing things requires that you should recuse yourself from participating so that probing questions can be asked. Because when you are nominated as a minister, you are supposed to perform outside of friendship. Do you understand? And the question that was put before him, can we trust you? And what was your role? Who instructed you? Under what orders did you command the Ayawaso West Wagon 10?
You're talking about Brian Achampong.
Brian Achampong.
And you heard his response.
Yes, and that was when probably he started getting agitated because I said, oh no, they were not speaking out of the facts. So for me, it was sufficient. But to go further to say that, no, don't ask those questions, it's a challenge. Finally, on the issue of downsizing, I think that President Akufo-Addo appears unperturbed about the need to reduce the size of government. Because this was a very brilliant opportunity presented before the president when ministers willingly decided to resign.
What were you expecting the president to do?
There is a minister overseeing the Ministry of Trade. And whilst there was a substantive minister, we did not get the Consumer Protection Act that is supposed to be promulgated and passed by Parliament. An overseer of that ministry came to Parliament to brief Parliament about steps they are taking to bring about a consumer protection law. Obviously, that tells you that a caretaker minister is even clothed with authority to ensure that the ministry is run effectively, efficiently, and efficaciously. If you go to the Ministry of Agriculture, by the way, I thought that our minister had become a Bordiera, selling Bordier at the Ministry of Agriculture.
Who are you referring to?
Akoto Afriye. And so that certainly is not policy option.
But that is not fair. He supervised planting for food and jobs and some key...
And so he suddenly became a Bordiera, Bordier Dana, Akoha Bordier at the Ministry of Agric. So obviously, so it is obvious that the same persons that President Akufo-Addo at a radio interview turned around and said, I have the Minister for Agric, Akoto Afriye, Alan Chiremanteng, and the Minister for Finance, and that they have performed excellently. Today we are told that in their absence, people can actually perform effectively and efficiently. What that signals Akufo-Addo is that the call for the removal of some of his ministers is more than opportune. Because when he replaces some of the ministers, particularly the Minister for Finance, he could get the chabrains that we are talking about here to come and take care of the Ministry of Finance and probably deliver.
Are you making conclusions that rather individuals who should have been reshuffled or even replaced should have been, for example, the
Because you see, if you go to the Ministry of Finance, we were fortunate to have Adu Boahim sacked. And when Adu Boahim was sacked, he was just a Minister of State at the Ministry of Finance. Why do you have to bring another Minister of State at the Ministry of Finance? And yesterday, the same word Pius used, Chabrin, was used on another station when I was there. That Amin Anta, who is, by the way, my brother and my former NUCS president, is a Chabrin, and that he is coming to bring efficiency and pragmatism at the Ministry of Finance. Then I said, so if you have a substandard Ken Ofori-Atta at the Ministry of Finance, why do you have to bring ministers of state to come and be the ones to be doing the Chabrin work, and then Ken Ofori-Atta is the one sitting down and making the policy statements?
You are saying Amin Anta rather should have replaced Ken Ofori-Atta?
Obviously.
Oh, how?
Why not? Because we were told yesterday that he's a Chabrin. So if you have a Chabrin, and this morning I had Chabrin again, why do you take a Chabrin to just be a mere Minister of State when you know that your Minister for Finance has underperformed grossly and that his policy options and choices have led this economy to the decay that we have today? And don't forget that the Minister for Finance has run parallel to what President Akufo-Addo believes, because Akufo-Addo doesn't believe in taxation for the progress of a nation. He believes in production. Akufo-Addo doesn't believe in borrowing for the health of or the progress of a nation. But Ken Ofori-Atta believes in borrowing, and he believes in taxation, which are opposite what President Akufo-Addo believes. So obviously, in a scale of A to F, you can say that Ken Ofori-Atta almost got F+.
What?
F+.
Now, Pius, at this stage, is there...
You chuckled, huh?
Because there's no F+. I haven't seen it in academic circles. So,
let's go on, my brother.
But at the end of the day, there seems to be a refrain that, look, if you look at where we are, the costs and size of government, the amount that we spend, we have in excess a deficit of 61 billion Ghana cedis. The president rather should be looking at how he cuts its government size, how he reduces expenditure on some key so-called social policy interventions, instead of just adding more or even replacing.
Roland, I will prove to you that the people who
prove to me
these assertions are just postulating empty theories. They haven't looked at the mathematics behind it. They haven't suggested.
You mean the key academics, professors at ISA, those in corporate world, etc. What did you describe them, Pius?
Roland, listen to me carefully.
I'm listening to you, Pius.
I have engaged many professors.
Because the refrain is that the president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, his government size is big. And then we are going to the IMF for a bailout of 3 billion.
Roland,
we're supposed to have a budget deficit of 61 billion. So reduce your size. You cut your quotes according to your size.
The people who are focusing on reduction of a so-called size...
which people?
Listen, Roland, you understand me. Don't rush. Let's take it gradually. They are speaking. I've listened to professors' profound, workable theories to how to manage government expenditure. And brilliant suggestions have been made. And I'm saying that.
And the refrain is that the president has refused to listen.
Suggestions do not include the noise I hear around the size of government. I don't consider that one as a brilliant suggestion because it doesn't suggest to me there's no...
Pius, are you saying that the considerations made by big academics, even those
I'm saying that
who
those
are monitoring the state of the economy,
they have
saying that our expenditure on the social side is too high, we need to reduce the size of government, the expenditure, and you call those suggestions noise? Is that what you're saying, Pius?
Listen to me. I'm saying that there is an issue with our public expenditure.
Yes.
There's no two ways about that.
True.
We are all interested in reducing the public expenditure.
Except the president.
And everybody, including the president.
How is he doing that?
If you took time to listen to me, you understand me. You keep asking questions in the middle of answering your questions. Okay. I'm saying that everybody is interested in reducing the public expenditure measured against our public revenue. That is what introduces the gap, which it necessitates even the need to go and borrow. So we are all united in saying that we need to increase government revenue and reduce government expenditure. And I've said that there are many brilliant minds in this country that are talking about some of the most creative and productive ways
for which the president has refused to listen to them.
If you want to now speak for me,
please
let me speak for myself. And I'm saying that there are many brilliant minds who are making productive suggestions about how to reduce the public purse. And I'm saying that those intelligent suggestions do not include a so-called size of the government, because you see, I will just prove to you that you can operate a size of a government and the cost to it can be managed so that at the end of the day, it is even lower than...
Are you sure, Pius?
Yes. Look, let me show you something. If you have a minister...
Show me, I'm listening.
If you have a minister who is already an MP, and you have ministers who are not MPs, they are all drawing from the exchequer. They are all taken from the consolidated fund.
True.
But the salaries of the MP is not different from the salary that he would take as a minister.
I agree.
There's a marginal top-up.
I agree with you.
So if you have a president who draws many of his ministers from parliament, they are paid already anyways. Their salary is paid. There's a marginal top-up. However, if you have a president who goes to bring a rather sizable number, just less than majority, from outside of parliament, even though the MPs who are in parliament are not being utilized, are already drawing from the consolidated fund, these new faces that you have brought are also going to draw afresh. So you can end up spending, in fact, more money from the public space on maintaining a certain X number of ministers. So you have to take your time and do the figures and do the mathematics. And it is not just noise about throwing about figures 80, 90, 100. Because if you disaggregate the data and look at the figures, then you can find out how much money.
Your argument is taking ministers from Parliament because it's even a constitutional mandate, 2/3, so to speak.
As a minimum benchmark.
Yes. It doesn't necessarily increase government expenditure.
Absolutely. That's why I'm saying that let us take our time.
Pius, the argument that is made regarding that, it's not...
Just the salary.
It's not in isolation. Because there's a huge expenditure that government makes on other sections of government machinery.
Yes.
And so... we are told by those who are observing the economy, and indeed we've had some great professors on stream who have that reduce the size of the ministers, it gives the optics, those in the Bretton Woods institutions.
You are talking about optics.
Yes,
So that is why I'm saying that let us deal with the substantive matters over the optics. I'm not interested in optics for the winning of politics and winning
the
of votes.
optics are not for the Ghanaians. They are for the Bretton Woods institution that you want to go out for bailout.
Any serious person out there who is either from the Bretton Woods institution or even here in Ghana, who wants to do substantive analysis, will be focused on the vexed issues, the figures and the numbers, and not on the optics. The optics is for the politicians who are going to be making political comments and all of that. And they are free to do that, but I'm not too worried about it. I'm saying that let them show to us the figures that, well, this is how much savings we are even suggesting. Then we can begin to engage. But I'm saying that those brilliant people who have made suggestions about government expenditure, they have shown creative ways. Government is interested. We are exploring those creative ways. But when my brothers speak the way they speak, now I understand why under the NDC we had Dumsor. Now I understand why under the NDC the allowances payable to teacher trainees and nursing trainees was withdrawn. Now I understand why the NDC could not do free SHS. Now I understand why under the NDC there was a cholera in Accra, the capital, that killed over 200 people under the NDC. And I can go on and on. You see, for them, it is all about optics. It is not about the substance. And so we have to win the vote. And so let us do the gimmicks, the gerrymandering. Let's proceed before the people and throw figures around. So for them, a minister that has a clear-cut vision with key KPIs and a clear deadline to meet, that can solve our doom, so that can pay free SHS, that can resolve the challenges and grow agriculture from the paltry 2.6 that we saw under them to the average 6% that we are now seeing under the NPP. It doesn't matter. Oh, we had a caretaker minister who could come and announce something in Parliament. So once we had a caretaker minister who could do that, why bother to appoint...
Let me ask you this. Do you think that if the Bretton Woods institutions, those who tend to watch the economy from the outside, were happy with us, Fitch, when in its latest downgrade, has taken us beyond the sea level? We're currently at RD. And my name is Roland. And these are the benchmarks. And I don't expect you to forget my name because we're classmates.
Yeah, it's just that.
Okay. So
it's just that. You see, when you have two people, and it's important that we discuss these issues. I thought we'd have had time. Bernard, Roland, really and truly, as a young Ghanaian, I am interested in this conversation that you just brought.
Don't forget my name again.
Roland, I am interested in this conversation that you just brought. And I have a very, very strong position on the rating agencies and how they treat African and developing countries. And I want my colleagues to begin to think along those lines. I do not understand why when the economies of some of the Western countries, like the UK, like the Americas, are even in bigger trouble than Ghana. They are not downgraded. Are
you sure?
Of course. We have relations who live there. We visit them. We see what is happening. They are never downgraded. You know why?
Those economies, they have companies like Apple. They have companies like Google. They have investors who are in Africa taking in foreign exchange into their countries, and so the inflows are high. There's high consumer spending. They even spend on the social side.
It's the same thing I'm talking about. I'm saying
the economies are not the same.
But I'm saying to you that when their economies are hit, when there is no fuel and vehicles are also lining up at the pumps to buy petrol, when there is food shortages, when they have, for the longest time, in history, their inflation goes up, like we saw in the United Kingdom, how is it that the rating agencies never downgrade them? Because you see, we are still operating as people of Africa and Ghanaians. Many of us are still operating a certain slave mentality, which allows these people to still continue to deploy these tools of manipulation against us. But Ronald, you don't know that when you are downgraded, you go and borrow money. It means that they make more money on your borrowing because the interest that you pay is higher. You think that they are doing us a favor by downgrading us? All of this is a part of the unfair world economic order.
You're not creating a conspiracy theory.
It is, but you're
blaming imperialism.
Look. When we discuss these issues, let's not narrow it down to NPP, NDC, and Mahama wanting to win an elections over Dr. Bawumia wanting to win an elections. These are... But I'm telling you that these, when the politicians appreciate these issues, and Mr. Mona is sitting right here in the middle, and I know his interest about Pan-Africanism and the development of Africa, and I've heard of his concerns about the unfair world system, and I'm saying that as young people, we should not be too worried about getting into parliament for the sake of it. Yeah. Because under the same economic order, if we do not advocate against it and do anything about it, Mr. Edem Agbana here, who is only, in my view, interested in becoming an MP for the NDC, when that happens, God forbid it, that they will win Ketu North, because we are going to win Ketu North in 2024. But when he goes to parliament, the situation he will be confronted with will be the same unfair order, which would continue to put Africa and Africans down there. And so we have to be... So when I'm talking to you, Roland, don't come to me with Fitch, okay? Let us discuss our bread and butter issues here.
Yeah, true.
People are talking about borrowing. One of the countries that owes the most in this world is America. They borrowed. As we speak, America is borrowing.
Actually, they owe a lot.
Nobody talks about America owing.
They control the world economy.
But that's the thing. Yeah. So when they control it, they come at you with all of this. And then because we are people who are only interested in the politics and winning elections, we throw it around and it's a vicious cycle that we have created. But you see, my surprise and my pain is that we have young people who are, in my view, not looking at the big picture. And they are focused on the immediate political gains of running down the country. And so they will posit all kinds of things and say that, the president, there's recklessness, and they use all kinds of words. But when we have to go down and deal with these issues, the size of government, what has it done? Let me suggest to my brother that, for instance, the rail ministry, and the NDC cannot, Roland, the NDC cannot attempt to govern through the back door. You were not elected by the people of Ghana in 2020 to govern this country. Fifi Kwete was not elected as president. He cannot tell the people of Ghana which ministries we must operate or not. That is disrespectful to the people of Ghanaians, to the people of Ghana, and he must be told that the people of Ghana invested their trust in a president who the law allows to manage the country the way he sees it fit. Sure. And that the results are the things that the people of Ghana are worried about. You have a situation where the NDC in parliament is now telling us that merge this ministry to this ministry, bring this ministry to this ministry, bring that here to that. That's governance. Is that what you are elected to do? Were you elected to do that? You now want to be president because you have 137 members of parliament, and that is how come on the eve of their swearing in, the NDC, knowing clearly that they're in the minority, they went to parliament and sat on the right of the speaker, a place that everybody knows that the 36+1, the working majority, should be sitting. The unruly behavior, the attempt to take over this country through the back door is what the NDC continues to exhibit, and that is what has led them to remove the former leadership of the parliament and bring in people they believe are people who are a little more, if you may, Rambo-style people who will come and shout and scream and say we will not pass these ministers, but they go and sit at the vetting and to a large extent get educated by the nominees who they are supposed to be vetting. And we saw it yesterday. I'll come back.
Adam,
Roland,
he puts in a key caveat that the state and the fundamentals of the economy will not go away even if the NDC wins power. But that's true. Because it's not the first time. It's not the first time we're going to the IMF.
I'll get to that. I'll get to that. But before then, he made a passing comment about Ketu North. This is settled. the NDC will always win Ketu North, and in 2024.
Are we slaves to you?
Oh, wait, I mean, why is he running out? Why did he run away from Ketu North? You should come.
And then move on.
If you are confident that you can win Ketu North,
we have to go for a break. Please, 2 minutes. I give it 2 minutes.
Let me go. I'm surprised.
Please, that's okay. I give it 2 minutes.
I am very surprised.
Surprised about what?
That my brother Pius, who was a deputy minister in the first term of President Akufo-Addo, is making analysis that I consider to be very, very problematic, to choose my words carefully.
What do you mean by that?
When we talk about reducing size of government, it is not only about the salaries of a minister and whether or not the minister is an MP. When you have ministries, ministries come with complete structures. And so when you go to Ministry of Information, so when you go to the Ministry of Information, you have a chief director,
so we should sack
and you have people who work under that ministry.
So we should sack them.
When under the NDC, we merged the Communications Ministry and the Information Ministry. What happens is that you have one chief director for the two ministries. And so you only do what we call realignment in the public sector. Now, when somebody is a chief director, his salary, his allowances, and what have you, is even different from when the person just works within the ministry. I am surprised that today, Pius thinks that calls for a reduction in the size of government are not intelligent calls. It means that in 2009, when President, that's what he said, that they are intelligent. He said there are some intelligent proposals or propositions, and that does not include the reduction. So the point is that if it means that calls for a reduction in the size of government are not intelligent. In 2009, President Akufo-Addo was not intelligent when he was calling for a reduction of 74 ministers and deputy ministers. I am scandalized that today, President Akufo-Addo made all of that. What we are saying is that... I think
what Pius is saying is that asking for a replacement of minister or reduction of minister really it's nothing. Because if you look at the Constitution...
It is nothing. At what point did they realize that it is nothing? You see, for me, let me tell you something.
Two-thirds, at least, or one-third of your... Two-thirds of your ministers from Parliament.
So even if you were appointing 40 ministers, the constitutional fundamentals are clear that you have at least 50%
and they don't earn more, they just earn extra.
No, they earn more. I'm telling you that when you go to the ministries don't operate alone. There's a structure that they operate with. So merging these ministries will help. And in our time, we had one ministry in charge of transport and all of that. You have come to divide it.
But that is how you
are spending lots of money. You are wasting a lot of money. And running down which center? What is your achievement in that sector? I think that Roland,
we decoupled the railway.
I didn't interrupt when you were talking. So Roland, the point is that Pius has established here this morning that Akufo-Addo was not intelligent in 2009 when he was calling for reduction in the size of government. Pius has established here this morning that but that's what he said. If you pay attention to what he said, that is the logic. The point must be made. The point must be made that the seriousness of the government that we have today is a matter that is of concern. And that is why Katie Hammond yesterday made a joke of himself. He turned the whole place into a comic relief.
The argument, no, Pius, no, let me give 2 minutes to Mr. Mona. Pius and
but you had enough time.
No, Pius. Just 2 minutes, and we're talking 120 seconds. The real argument about reducing the size of government, what do you make of it? And whether it's a good thing or a good call?
Give me 30 seconds.
No, 120 seconds.
Finish, I'll give you the
Please, let's go on. I'm timing. I think
that I'm a very productive mind, and I am calling for the reduction of the size of government. For anyone to say that productive minds that he has listened to never said that reducing the size of government is an option to cutting down expenditure is to undermine my level of intelligence. See, when you talk about the size of government and you talk about the ministerial, look, the Constitution was not made in vacuum, and it gave a certain level of expectations when it says that you must have at least 10 ministers and not more than 19 cabinet ministers. It gives you a certain level of expectations that the Constitution of Ghana is expecting from the persons who are leading this country.
And they should have ministers?
Not more than 19.
That's what the Constitution says?
Yes.
That we should have not more than 19?
Not more than 19 cabinet ministers.
Yes.
Can I, Pius? I thought you were requesting for 30 seconds from me.
Please go on.
So how will you get it when you are
Please
interjecting?
go on.
So it's obvious that that expectation is that we should have at least 10 and at most 19 cabinet ministers. So now when we go beyond the 19 cabinet ministers, cabinet ministers are not ministers.
Go on.
Not all ministers are cabinet
I'm
ministers.
saying that, are they not cabinet ministers? So we can run this nation with only cabinet ministers.
Regional ministers, for instance, are not cabinet ministers.
What? Yeah, precisely.
ministers.
Tell me the locus
Now
of a
we have
regional
16
minister.
regions.
No,
You
tell
say
me
you-
the locus of a regional minister, since you want to engage me. Where I sit, there is no relevance in a regional minister.
Yeah.
Where I sit.
Wow.
Yes, where I sit, the regional minister performs no function. District assemblies are there. District assemblies are there. Yeah. Tell me what extraordinary thing the regional ministers are doing.
You are suggesting a constitutional review.
Can I?
No.
Can I? Which part of the Constitution say that you must have regional ministers? And even suggesting a constitutional review cannot constitute a crime.
No, it's not a crime.
So
that's why I'm not arresting you.
So, in fact, you don't have the authority to arrest me.
Why? Citizen arrest.
Okay. We want to arrest Ken Ofori-Atta. Join us to do so. So it's obvious. It's obvious that, look, at a time when majority of Ghanaian contractors cannot be paid, particularly the small contractors, you get money and you identify one or two huge contractors and pay, when you could use that money to pay about 300 minor contractors. You are not paying them. We sit here, teachers that were employed January 2022, as of today, have not received their salaries. Right? We sit here, and you have NAPCO workers that have finished, NAPCO is even collapsed, and they have not yet received their income. And when we talk about reducing the size of government, you are not reducing it. And those that are in government have turned themselves into some caricatures, stealing and siphoning state money into their private businesses. So we can sit here. Ken Ofori-Atta can just take money and say that we are going to give to frontline workers. You are no more at the Ministry of Information. People at Ministry of Information are frontline workers. You go and give money to Enterprise Insurance and say that
things like this on national TV, and I'm supposed not to comment. It's difficult for me.
True, but these are facts.
Why? Ken Ofori-Atta did not give Enterprise Insurance over 10 million Ghana cedis, claiming that he is going to insure.
Now you are adding the claims. But first of all, when you made that, well, I'm being guided.
Please conclude.
You must be guided because I will do the same to you. So when you give our 10 million Ghana cedis to Enterprise Insurance, and no single insurance certificate is issued for any insuree, you are sitting here excited to be leading young people who are not paid.
What you just said is not true.
Please go ahead.
What you just
go
said
ahead.
is not
Pius, please, stop.
Or you think Ken Ofori-Atta will support your parliamentary bid? That's why you are doing what you are doing.
Mr. Mona, please.
So stop what you are doing here. No, stop this. And be
We're going
serious.
for a break.
No, relax.
When
Stop
we
this.
come back, we'll look at the absence of classroom furniture at Sisipe. And it is an annexed primary school at the East Gonja municipality of the Savannah region. And then also look at how we can resolve the Boko crisis. We're taking a break. We'll be right back.